Let me ask you a question. What separates those who dream about success from those who live it? It's not luck. It's not talent. It's not even intelligence. It's something far more raw, far more relentless. It's obsession. The truth is, average desire will never produce extraordinary results. Casual interest won't take you to the top. You can want success all you want, but unless that one turns into a fire so consuming that it takes over your thoughts, your energy, your actions, success will always stay out of reach. Think about it. Every person who has ever changed the world, built an empire, broken through the impossible, they all had one thing in common. They weren't interested. They weren't half in, half out. They were obsessed. Their goals weren't a wish. They were an absolute necessity. They didn't say, I hope it works. They said, this will work or I will die trying. And that's the difference. Obsession doesn't ask, is it possible? Obsession says, it's already mine. It's just a matter of time. So as you listen to me today, I don't want you to just hear these words. I want you to feel them. Because if you truly understand the power of obsession, if you allow yourself to step into that state of absolute commitment, you won't just succeed. You'll succeed at any cost. When you look at the people who've achieved greatness, when you study the ones who actually turned impossible dreams into reality, you'll notice something right away. They weren't casual about it. They weren't dabblers. They weren't curious. They weren't interested. They were locked in. They were obsessed. And obsession does something extraordinary, sharpens your vision until the only thing you can see is the outcome you're after. See, most people live in a fog. They wake up with 50 different things pulling at their attention. They say they want success. Their energy is scattered in 100 directions. They're worried about what their friends think. They're scrolling through distractions. They're dabbling in one project today, another tomorrow, constantly shifting without ever locking in on one thing that truly matters. And then they wonder why years pass by and nothing changes. They wonder why they feel stuck. It's because clarity is missing. But obsession creates that clarity. You're obsessed. There is no fog. There is no confusion. There is no should I or shouldn't I. It becomes simple. It becomes binary. There's the vision and then there's everything else. And everything else gets pushed aside. Think about it. When you've ever truly wanted something with your whole being, you didn't need to be reminded. You didn't need motivation. You couldn't stop thinking about it. It showed up in your conversations, in your body language, your late night thoughts and your early morning actions. That's the power of obsession. It burns away the noise and what's left is crystal clear direction. Now, people will tell you don't be obsessed, be balanced. Want it too badly. But let me tell you, balance is overrated if it comes at the cost of your potential. Nobody who ever became extraordinary did it by being balanced. Nobody who ever built greatness did it by keeping things comfortable. Balance is for people who are okay with average. Obsession is for people who want to leave a mark so deep the world remembers it. And here's the truth. Once obsession takes hold of you, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, should I do it? You just do it. That's why clarity matters so much. If you don't know exactly what you're chasing, if you don't have that picture burned into your mind, you'll hesitate, you'll procrastinate, you'll make excuses. But if the vision is clear, if it's burned into your nervous system with obsession, hesitation disappears. You move, you act, you execute. I'll give you an example. Think about someone starving for food, someone who hasn't eaten in days. Do you think they need to be told, you should probably go find something to eat? Of course not. They're consumed by that one need. Everything else becomes irrelevant. That's obsession in its rawest form. Now imagine if you could harness that same intensity for your goals, your dreams, your mission. Imagine if you woke up every single day so crystal clear about what you wanted that every cell in your body moved in the same direction. That's when life changes. Most people fail not because they can't, because they never define the target clearly enough to let obsession take root. They play small, they keep it vague. I want to be successful. I want to be happier. I want to be rich. That's not clarity. That's a wish. Obsession doesn't live in wishes. Obsession lives in specifics. Obsession is when you can close your eyes and see it so vividly it feels real, when you can hear it, taste it, touch it in your imagination, and then that image pulls you toward it like gravity. But let's get real. When you live with that kind of clarity, you will intimidate people. They won't understand you. They'll say you're too much, too intense, too obsessed. They'll tell you to calm down, to be more realistic, but that's only because they don't have the courage to be that clear themselves. People are threatened by obsession because it forces them to confront their own mediocrity. But you can't let their fear blur your vision. You've got to stay locked in. And here's where it gets powerful. Clarity doesn't just guide your actions, it rewires your identity. When you're obsessed with a vision, it stops being something outside of you and starts becoming who you are. It's not, I hope I become this someday. It's, this is who I am now. Everything else needs to catch up. That shift changes the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you approach every obstacle. You stop chasing success like it's something far away and start embodying it as your present reality. That's obsession. So many people think obsession is about working harder, pushing more hours, grinding nonstop. But the truth is, obsession isn't about doing more. It's about cutting away what doesn't matter. It's about eliminating the distractions, the half-hearted efforts, the things that don't align with the vision. Obsession creates focus, and focus creates power. That's why the most obsessed people often look like they have more time, more energy, stamina than everyone else. It's not that they have more hours, it's that they've stopped wasting them. Now I want you to think about your own life. Where have you been dabbling? Where have you been interested, but not obsessed? Have you been keeping it vague, saying you want something, but never defining it clearly enough to burn it into your nervous system? Be honest with yourself. Because the moment you get honest is the moment you can shift. The moment you decide, this is what I'm chasing, this is what I'm living for, this is what I'll commit to no matter what. That's the moment your life begins to accelerate in ways you can't even imagine. And let me be clear, obsession isn't about ignoring everything else in life. It's about putting the mission in the center and aligning everything else around it. Relationships, health, growth, contribution, all of it can serve the obsession if you let it. Without that central obsession, everything becomes scattered. With it, everything falls into place. So here's the bottom line. If you want to succeed at any cost, you've got to get clear. You've got to burn the vision into your mind so deeply that it becomes all you see, all you feel, all you breathe. Because when you live with that level of clarity, you don't need luck. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need someone to hand you an opportunity. You create it. You force it into existence. You manifest it through sheer, relentless obsession. That's when the fog clears. That's when hesitation dies. That's when your vision becomes inevitable. If there's one truth you've got to embrace, it's this. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is not here to destroy you. Pain is here to shape you. But the way most people experience pain is they run from it. They hit a wall, they feel resistance, they get rejected, they stumble. And the first instinct is to back off, to protect themselves, to retreat into comfort. That's why most people never break through. They see pain as punishment instead of power. When obsession takes over, when your vision is locked in so clearly that nothing else matters, pain stops being something to avoid and starts being fuel for the fire. Think about it. Every breakthrough you've ever had in your life came on the other side of struggle. Every defining moment where you became more than you were before came through challenge, not ease. Growth never came when things were smooth, never came when everything was comfortable. It came when you were stretched, when you were tested, when you were forced to find strength you didn't even know you had. That's what pain gives you if you choose to use it. Most people don't see it that way. They feel pain and they say, why me? They treat it like an injustice. But the obsessed see pain and say, try me. They flip the script. Instead of asking, why is this happening? They ask, is this making me into? What muscle is this building? What lesson is hidden inside this moment? And that shift changes everything. Because if you can take pain and convert it into drive, there's no limit to what you can do. Let's be real, failure hurts. Rejection hurts. Being told you're not good enough, being laughed at, being underestimated, it all stings. Losing money, losing time, losing people you thought would be there, it cuts deep. But here's the choice. You can let that pain bury you, or you can let it light you up. You can let it convince you that you're not meant to win, or you can let it harden your resolve until you're unstoppable. Pain is neutral. It's energy. Energy can be destructive or constructive. The difference is the meaning you attach to it. I want you to imagine a fire. That fire can burn down your house, or it can heat your home. It's the same fire. Pain works the same way. To some, it's destruction. To others, it's warmth, it's power, it's fuel. And the only difference is perspective. The obsessed understand that. They don't waste energy crying about the fire. They step into it and say, this is going to propel me. Now, let's talk about rejection for a moment. Most people crumble when someone says no. They take rejection as a permanent label. But the obsessed, they treat rejection like a dare. They treat it like a challenge to come back sharper, smarter, stronger. No becomes a seed for the next was. Every door slammed in their face becomes an opportunity to build another door, or hell, knock down the wall and make their own entrance. That's a session at work. It refuses to let pain be the final word. And what about failure? Society tells you failure is bad. From the time you're young, you're punished for mistakes. You're taught to avoid them at all costs. But here's the truth. Failure is tuition. It's the price of mastery. It's the evidence that you're actually in the game. If you're not failing, you're not pushing. If you're not stumbling, you're not stretching. And the obsessed know this. They embrace failure like a sparring partner. Every time they fall, they don't just get back up. They get back up sharper. They let failure sting them just enough to remind them what's at stake. And then they convert that sting into hunger. You see, session rewires the way you interpret struggle. The average person, pain is a stop sign. To the obsessed, pain is a green light. It says, good, I'm on the right track. If it hurts, it's making me stronger. If it's hard, it's reshaping me. If it's uncomfortable, it's preparing me for the next level. And when you start to think like that, when you stop avoiding pain and instead welcome it, the entire game changes. Here's something else you need to know. The people you admire most, legends, the ones who broke barriers, they went through pain so deep most of us couldn't even imagine it. They were laughed at, rejected, bankrupt, broken, humiliated, doubted, ridiculed. But instead of letting those moments define them, they used them. They said, watch me. They let every insult, every failure, every loss become a stepping stone. And that's why they're remembered. Not because they avoided pain, but because they turned pain into power. Now, let's get personal for a moment. I want you to think back to a painful moment in your own life. Maybe it was a betrayal. Maybe it was a loss. Maybe it was that moment where everything seemed to collapse and you didn't know how you'd recover. Think about how much it hurt. Now realize this, that moment could have broken you, but you're here. You made it through, you survived. And whether you see it or not, you're stronger because of it. If you could survive that, what else could you survive? Else could you overcome if you chose to let that pain fuel you instead of haunt you? The difference between those who stay stuck in pain and those who use it is simple meaning. The story you tell yourself about the pain will either trap you or free you. If you say, this happened to me because I'm not enough, because I'll never win, because life is unfair, you bury yourself. But if you say, this happened to sharpen me, to prepare me, to teach me something I couldn't learn any other way, suddenly the pain becomes power. Suddenly it becomes an advantage. And let's not sugarcoat it. When you're obsessed, you'll go through more pain than most people can handle. You'll sacrifice more, you'll face more rejection, you'll fall harder because you're swinging bigger. But you'll also rise higher. You'll also build stamina most people can't even comprehend. That's why the obsessed don't burn out when things get tough. They burn brighter because they've trained themselves to see pain not as the enemy, but as the ally. So here's the challenge I'm giving you. The next time you feel pain, run from it. Don't numb it. Don't hide from it. Don't make excuses. Look it in the eye and say, you're fuel. You're here to feed me. Take the sting, take the burn, and channel it into action. Channel it into hunger. Channel it into obsession. Because once you learn to do that, pain will never control you again. Instead, it will serve you. That's the moment where setbacks turn into comebacks. That's the moment where rejection turns into redirection. That's the moment where failure turns into fuel. That's the moment when pain stops breaking you and starts building you. If obsession gives you clarity and pain gives you fuel, then discipline is the bridge that makes it all real. Because without discipline, obsession stays in your head. Without discipline, all the fire, all the passion, all the desire burns out before it ever becomes anything tangible. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Dreams don't collapse because people didn't want them badly enough. They collapse because people didn't build the structure to support them. That structure is discipline. Now, people hear that word and instantly shrink. Discipline sounds harsh. It sounds restrictive. They picture it as chains, as a punishment. But when you're obsessed, discipline stops feeling like restriction and starts feeling like freedom. It's not chains. It's the key. Discipline is what frees you from the grip of your weaker self. Discipline is what takes all that raw obsession and channels it into consistent action day after day, no matter how you feel. Most people live by their emotions. If they feel motivated, they move. If they don't, they stay stuck. If they're excited, they show up. If they're tired, they pull back. That's why their results are inconsistent. They're slaves to how they feel in the moment. But when you're obsessed, when the vision is non-negotiable, discipline takes over where emotion fades. You stop asking, do I feel like it? Because the answer doesn't matter. You do it because it's required you, because the mission demands it. Think about an athlete training for the Olympics. Do you think they feel motivated every day? Of course not. There are mornings their body screams at them to stay in bed. Nights when their muscles ache, when they're exhausted, when quitting would be easy. But they don't quit. They don't negotiate with themselves. They've built discipline so deep that action becomes automatic. It's not a choice anymore. It's who they are. And that's what obsession demands: ruthless discipline. Discipline is what separates those who dream from those who do. Everyone has dreams. Everyone has visions. Everyone talks about what they want. Only the disciplined back it up with relentless consistency. Only the disciplined wake up earlier, sacrifice comforts, and push through the resistance every single day. Because obsession alone isn't enough. Without discipline, obsession is just excitement. Discipline is what makes it real. And here's something powerful. When you're truly obsessed, discipline doesn't even feel like discipline. It doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like oxygen. You don't have to drag yourself into it. You can't not do it. It becomes unnatural not to act. Skipping a workout, skipping a practice, skipping a step in the plan, it feels wrong, like holding your breath. That's when you know obsession has fused with discipline. That's when you know you've crossed the line from interested to unstoppable. But let's be real. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's not about never slipping. It's about the standard you hold yourself to when you do slip. Most people fail once and they throw in the towel. They miss one day and tell themselves the whole thing is ruined. But discipline is about bouncing back faster than anyone else. Discipline is about saying, yes, I stumbled, but I don't stop. It's about refusing to let one setback turn into a spiral. Because the disciplined know that one weak moment doesn't erase the mission. Here's where it gets even deeper. Discipline is about sacrifice. You can't have it all. You can't eat junk every day and have peak energy. You can't waste hours scrolling and expect to master your craft. You can't chase comfort and chase greatness at the same time. Something has to give. And discipline is the act of choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term pleasure. It's the willingness to say no to what feels good now so you can say yes to what you've committed to becoming. And I'll tell you this, the sacrifices never feel easy in the moment, but they always feel worth it in hindsight. You'll never regret the workouts you did, the hours you studied, the habits you built. You'll regret the times you let comfort win. You'll regret the moments you gave in to weakness. Discipline saves you from those regrets. Most people underestimate the compounding effect of discipline. They think missing one day, one choice, one step doesn't matter. But discipline knows that every choice stacks, every decision builds momentum. Every day of action strengthens your identity. Time, those small, consistent acts create results so massive they look impossible from the outside. But to you, they're not impossible. They're inevitable because you were disciplined enough to stay the course when others fell away. Let me say this. Discipline isn't glamorous. Nobody sees the early mornings. Nobody claps for the sacrifices. Nobody applauds you for saying no to the party, for staying late, for grinding when it's quiet. But that's where champions are made. That's where greatness is forged, in the hours nobody else sees and the commitments nobody else honors. Discipline doesn't need an audience because discipline isn't about applause. It's about results. So the question is, you willing to live with that kind of discipline? Are you willing to live in such alignment with your obsession that comfort becomes irrelevant, that distractions lose their pull, that sacrifice becomes second nature? Because if you are, there's nothing you can't build. There's nothing you can't achieve. Discipline is the multiplier of obsession. It's what takes your fire and turns it into an inferno that cannot be put out. Here's the beauty of it. Once you've built discipline in one area, it spreads. If you can master your mornings, you can master your days. If you can master your body, you can master your mind. If you can master your habits, you can master your destiny. Discipline is contagious. It strengthens every part of who you are until you become unstoppable, not because you never feel weak, but because you never let weakness win. So understand this, dreams without discipline are fantasies. Goals without discipline are lies you tell yourself. Obsession without discipline is wasted energy. But obsession fused with discipline, that's a force that cannot be denied, force that tears through resistance, a force that makes achievement not just possible, but inevitable. And that's why if you're truly serious about succeeding at any cost, discipline can't just be something you try, it has to become who you are. Because once discipline becomes your identity, your results will always reflect it. There comes a moment when obsession has burned the vision into your mind, when pain has been turned into fuel, discipline has molded your daily actions into habits so strong they're unshakable. And in that moment, success stops being a question of if and starts becoming a matter of when. That's the inevitability of obsession. Success isn't luck. Success isn't chance. Success isn't reserved for the chosen few. Success belongs to the obsessed because they refuse to quit until it's theirs. You see, most people treat success like a lottery ticket. They think if the timing is right, if the stars align, if someone notices them, if they get one lucky break, maybe then it'll happen. That's why they never get it, because they're waiting. But the obsessed don't wait. They don't gamble with their future. They don't hope it happens. They make it happen. They stay in the game long enough that eventually the game has no choice but to bend to their will. The truth is, talent isn't what guarantees success. We all know people who are talented but broke. Know people who are gifted but stuck. Opportunity alone isn't enough either. You can hand the same opportunity to 10 people, and only the obsessed will turn it into something extraordinary. Make success inevitable isn't what you start with. It's what you refuse to give up on. It's the persistence, the obsession, the absolute refusal to back down that stacks the odds so heavily in your favor that eventually you cannot be denied. Think about it like this. Most people quit too soon. They push a little, they try for a while, and when it doesn't work out fast enough, they say, I guess it wasn't meant for me. But the obsessed don't think like that. The obsessed understand that every setback is just part of the process. Every failure is just another step forward. They don't quit because they don't see the result yet. They keep going until the result has no choice but to show up. That kind of persistence is rare, and that's exactly why it's so powerful. Imagine two people digging for gold. One digs for a week, finds nothing, and walks away. The other digs for a year, exhausted, blistered, bleeding, still finds nothing, but keeps digging. Who do you think eventually hits the vein? The one who stayed in the dirt long enough, the one who refused to quit. That's how success works. It doesn't always show up quickly. Sometimes it hides. Sometimes it tests you. Sometimes it stretches you to see how badly you really want it. But if you refuse to stop, if you keep going when everyone else has already tapped out, success becomes inevitable. That's what obsession gives you. It gives you staying power. It gives you the endurance to outlast the temporary. It gives you the kind of stubbornness that refuses to surrender no matter how bleak things look. And that's what wins in the end. Not the fastest start, not the flashiest talent, not the perfect conditions. The last one standing. The one who never gave in. And here's something most people never realize is success doesn't come to the one who works the hardest for a week, even a month. Success comes to the one who stays consistent for years, who's willing to play the long game, who's willing to keep going after the excitement wears off, after the applause dies down, after the crowd moves on. The obsessed keep pushing long after everyone else gets tired. That's when momentum starts compounding. And momentum, once it builds, is almost impossible to stop. You know what's even more powerful? Success becomes inevitable not just because of what you're doing, but because of who you're becoming in the process. Every time you refuse to quit, you're building a stronger version of yourself. Every time you push through one more obstacle, stacking evidence that you are unstoppable. And the more evidence you stack, the harder it becomes to ever doubt yourself again. That inner certainty, that unshakable belief is what makes success inevitable, because once you know deep in your core that nothing can break you, the external results are just a matter of time. Now, let me be clear. Inevitable doesn't mean easy. It doesn't mean you won't get knocked down. It doesn't mean you won't cry. It doesn't mean you won't bleed. It doesn't mean the path will suddenly be smooth. It means that none of those things will be strong enough to stop you. It means that while others will give up when the road gets tough, you'll keep going until the road runs out of resistance. It means that while everyone else waits for permission, you'll create your own opportunity. And that's the beauty of obsession. Once it takes hold of you, quitting doesn't even feel like an option. It doesn't feel possible. It feels like betrayal, like suffocating. You'd rather suffer, rather fail 1,000 times, rather crawl on your knees than walk away from the vision that consumes you. That's why success becomes inevitable, because obsession removes the escape route. You've burned the boats. You've cut off plan B. There's no going back. So the only path is forward until you win. People will look at you and say you're lucky. They'll say you had it easy. They'll say you were born for it. They'll never see the years of discipline, the mountains of pain, the relentless obsession that made it inevitable. They'll never see the sacrifices, the lonely nights, the doubts you conquered. They'll only see the result. And that's fine, because you didn't do it for their approval. You did it because you could not do it. You did it because obsession demanded it. When you finally arrive, when the vision becomes reality, when success shows up not as a surprise, but as the natural consequence of who you've become, you'll know the truth. You'll know that it wasn't chance, it wasn't luck, it wasn't timing. It was inevitable because you were obsessed enough to outlast every excuse, every setback, every obstacle. So don't play small. Don't treat your vision like a hobby. Don't approach your goals like they're optional. Get obsessed. Get clear. Embrace the pain. Live with discipline. And stay in the game long enough that success has no choice but to surrender to your will. Because when you're truly obsessed, success isn't just possible, it's guaranteed.